look back at the history of Fortnite, they usually talk about past seasons or chapters. But what really defined each era of Fortnite wasn't just the game, it was the players. And more specifically, the rivalries between them. Some rivalries started before Fortnite even released. Some were built on pride and ego.
I'm landing on you next game.
Others were so intense they changed entire tournaments, and a few lasted years. So today we're going through 10 iconic rivalries that shaped Fortnite. And to understand how it all began, we have to go all the way back to H1Z1. Before Fortnite was even a thing, Ninja and Tfue already had history. This goes all the way back to H1Z1 in 2015. And if you weren't around for that era, it was different. It was a lot more common for streamers to be toxic towards one another.
Oh, you
The you say to me, you little
H1Z1 had a ranking system based on your best 10 games. So every top player would play hyper aggressive and try to drop 20 bombs. And with 150 player lobbies, it meant you ran into the same players constantly, which meant that Ninja and Tfue were in each other's games all the time. They were both ahead of their time mechanically and insanely competitive.
Oh, that is literally, dude, the definition of a nerdy play, man.
And with that, neither one of them held back on stream. Old clips definitely show it. Both of them were a lot more edgy back then. Ninja's hyper was a different beast. Not enough to be canceled, but was definitely pushing it.
You say to me, listen here, you little
When Fortnite blew up, the tension carried over. Tfue later claimed that Ninja was talking behind his back, tried to undermine his success, and even pushed for him to be permanently banned during one of his Twitch suspensions.
Yeah, I was just a threat to him and the space, so he tried to kind of eliminate me at the time.
Whether that was fully true or not, Tfue believed it, and that's when things got personal. One of the biggest events between them in their rivalry was when Mr. Beast held a rock, paper, scissors tournament. Everyone was asked not to stream the event because it was for charity and they wanted the views on Mr. Beast's stream. But Tfue decided to stream anyways and ended up accidentally leaking the code to the tournament and leaking Mr. Beast's phone number as well.
Dude, I'm so sorry, guys. I know everyone hates right now, and I apologize for the inconvenience. It's completely my fault. I take full responsibility for everything.
Ninja called out Tfue on Twitter saying he messed up, and Tfue responded to him with some choice language and carried out the toxicity on stream.
I deserve it. I'm a idiot, but like Ninja shouldn't be talking because he's a and he's got his mouth shut. Like, tell him that he's a frail cotton candy head.
There were also some jabs towards Ninja about his viewer count when he moved to Mixer, and on top of all that, Tfue tried to challenge Ninja to a boxing match.
He's lucky this is rock paper scissors, because if this was a fight or something, bro, I wish. Ninja, fight me, bro. Fight me. This is your chance.
That clip was everywhere, and at one point Ninja's wife even got dragged into it, and that's when things really escalated between the two. But over time, something changed. They both matured and even started to play games together. This was probably one of the first and longest lasting rivalries in Fortnite history. The next rivalry happened between Clix and Unknown Army. Both players were very competitive and they honestly just didn't like each other. And there was a lot of ego between the two when doing wagers. But the biggest moment that started this beef was back in an FNCS solo finals that had a $2 million prize pool. Clix sniped Unknown and then emoted on him, which really pissed him off.
You're dancing on
I
me?
should have went zone, idiot.
You're dancing on me.
Unknown had felt like Clix had griefed him earlier in the tournament, and that emote was disrespectful. After he died, he said he was going to land on Clix and get his revenge.
You want to dance on me? I'm landing on you next game.
Why didn't you go to zone?
Shut the up.
So he pulled up the replay to find out where he landed and decided to drop on Clix at Pleasant Park. His intention was to grief his tournament, which is an issue Clix still has with players even today. Throughout the rest of the tournament, Unknown kept talking about only wanting to eliminate Clix, making it clear he didn't care about his own placement as long as Clix did bad.
Hey, if you kill him, get that heavy sniper and just to everybody's box.
He griefed my first game and that game. No one dances on me together.
However, he didn't manage to kill Clix once. There was one time where he was chasing a player for 10 minutes and it wasn't even him. It's not against the rules to change your drop spot mid-tournament, but typically players do it with the intent of improving their placement. not purely to ruin someone's tournaments. Even Ninja got involved and posted a video telling people that this kind of behavior shouldn't happen. He let players know that just because they're not doing well in a tournament doesn't mean that they should be griefing and ruining someone else's game. They even lived in the same esports house and would ignore each other so often that other members of the house wanted them to just hug it out and get it over with. And when they did try to get them to sit down and talk, it was non-stop trolling and interrupting each other. Now that Unknown doesn't compete in Fortnite, it seems like they're at least on civil terms, and this rivalry may have just been really fueled by the competitive nature of both of these guys. But this wasn't the only time we've seen Clix involved in a heated rivalry. The next one was with Clix, Bugha, and Bizzle going up against Gabe, Tahi, and Sprite. Basically, this rivalry was so bad, it led to the breakup of the legendary Clix, Bugha, Bizzle trio. Before FNCS Chapter 2 Season 6 even began, both trios had already chosen the same drop spot, Sweaty Sands. And once the tournament started, it immediately turned into one of the most talked about off-spawn battles of the season. In Qualifier 1, the teams fought 6 times off-spawn. Clix's trio lost 5 out of the 6 fights, and because of that, they placed 29th that week. But the fights were so drawn out that it also hurt Tahi's trio, who only got 15th themselves. Qualifier 2 wasn't much better. The only real change was that Tahi's trio didn't load into the first game, but by the end, the off-spawn record was essentially 5-0 in favor of Gabe, Tahi, and Sprite. At this point, the rivalry was a full-on ego battle. Clix, Bugha, and Bizzle had the money, history, and reputation between the three, and Gabe, Tahi, and Sprite had the real momentum going into each fight. They were winning almost every single fight, and the rivalry was bringing them a ton of attention and followers.
It's unfortunate. We haven't really been keeping count of this spawn fight. I'm sure people have behind the scenes. I'm sure social media is freaking out and they're enjoying the show here, but either way.
Clix's trio had every reason to give up their drop spot, but instead they stayed determined to prove that they were still the big dogs. Then things got even more interesting. When the heats were announced for FNCS, they realized that both trios would be competing in the same lobby, and only the top 6 teams qualified directly to the grand finals, and 7th through 17th would advance to the reboot rounds. Heading into the final game of heats, Clix, Bugha, and Bizzle were all the way down in 32nd. Their tournament was already over, and instead of playing for placements, they decided to grief Tahi's trio and keep them out of 17th. But ironically, because of all the elimination points that Clix's trio gave them earlier in the tournament, Gabe, Tahi, and Sprite were still able to sneak into the reboot rounds, while Clix, Bugha, and Bizzle weren't even close. Sprite then went on to give us a legendary clutch in Game 1, which is still one of the most memorable moments in competitive Fortnite.
Team. He is a solo right now. He has every advantage. He has the builds. He has the health. Oh my God. Has done it. Gabe, Tahi, and Sprite. What have we just witnessed?
No.
In the end, the situation was a complete disaster for Clix, Bugha, and Bizzle. That and the toxicity from Clix's community towards Bizzle caused the trio to eventually split up. Another rivalry that took over the competitive scene during this era was Pgod versus Mackwood. And unlike some other drop spot battles, this one escalated outside of the game as well. It exploded across Twitter, putting 2 entirely different communities against each other. Latin American fans supported Pgod, and the North American audience was backing Mackwood. And at the center of this rivalry were 2 very good trios. On one side was the rising squad of Pgod, Peterbot, and TK. On the other side was a far more experienced trio, Mackwood, an FNCS champion and World Cup Duos finalist, teamed up with Tragix, one of the best fighters in the game at the time, alongside an elite controller player, Illist. And what caused this rivalry was nothing but ego. Pgod's trio had been performing extremely well early in the season. They placed 5th in the first FNCS qualifiers and even won a trio cash cup shortly after. The sudden rise in success brought attention and controversy. Around this time, cheating accusations against Peterbot began circulating, even coming from tier 1 pros like Bugha, which only added more fuel to the fire.
Yo! Chat, we might have just exposed the next hacker. I didn't want to be that guy. If he's not cheating, he is the best. I'm so serious, on my life.
But the real drama didn't begin until FNCS Qualifier 2, when both trios ended up in the same lobby and decided to contest Craggy Cliffs. Before the games even started, Mackwood fired the first shots on Twitter, posting, "If you want to contest in FNCS, just take a quick look at your bank account and see if it's a really good idea." The tweet was meant to be a warning, but instead, Pgod ratioed him with the tweet as the rivalry instantly exploded online. Once the tournament started, the fights at Craggy lived up to the hype. Qualifier 2 ended up in a 3-3 split off spawn, with both trios trading wins throughout the day. And after nearly every fight, the trash talk immediately continued live on Twitter. By the end of the week, Pgod's trio placed 8th, while Mackwood's trio finished 14th, both falling short of the top 3 they needed to directly qualify for the grand finals. When Qualifier 3 arrived, the off-spawn battle briefly continued, splitting 1-1 early in the tournament. But this time, Pgod made a different decision. Instead of continuing the ego battle and risking their tournament, his trio left Craggy entirely to focus on qualifying for heats. And that decision paid off. Pgod's trio would eventually qualify through heats, while Mackwood's squad had a much harder path, barely making it into reboot rounds. However, they finally secured their spot in grand finals. During the finals, Pgod's trio avoided the drop spot conflict entirely, landing across the north side of the map between craggy cliffs and steamy stacks. And in the end, the results speak for themselves. Pgod's trio finished 11th in the grand finals, while Mackwood's trio placed 25th. And in a twist that no one expected, Pgod's trio actually ends up splitting up. And in season 8, Peterbot ends up teaming up with Mackwood and Bucky, landing right back at Craggy Cliffs, the same spot that started the rivalry in the first place. Another rivalry in the early days of Fortnite actually involved Myth and myself. It wasn't an insane rivalry, but things got heated pretty quickly. It happened during the OG days of a Fortnite Friday tournament. Back then, the tournament had pretty simple rules. Every streamer had to play with a 2-minute stream delay to prevent stream sniping. Now, something that a lot of people don't realize is that Twitch already has a natural delay when you're streaming. It's usually around 5 to 10 seconds. So when I set up my stream, I accounted for that natural delay and added my stream delay on top of it. So instead of having a delay of 120 seconds in OBS, I actually had it set to 115 seconds. During this tournament, I actually ended up taking down Myth and Hamlins, and Myth immediately started to think that something was off.
Myth, they don't even have to have anybody watching the stream. I could message 5 people and be like, all right, I'm queuing up right now. That's true. Get in there and kill Myth. But 100%. Nobody's doing that in this tournament, bro. This is not
the thing.
It's not like that.
Twitch works in marvelous ways, brother.
It is common knowledge that Twitch has its own natural delay.
From his perspective, it seemed like there might have been some stream sniping going on, and word started spreading that I didn't have a 2-minute delay on my stream. And because Fortnite Friday was such a huge event at the time, things escalated really fast.
So I was a smaller guy in the space, and I had thousands of viewers coming in like, cheater, oh my god, you should get banned.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And Myth even asked for a full rematch because he thought I didn't have a delay at all. But once everything was actually checked and people realized my delay was only off by a few seconds, it was pretty clear that it didn't actually make a difference in the match. And after that, the situation cooled down pretty quickly, and Myth and I to this day have no personal beef. Another rivalry that caught the attention of a lot of Fortnite competitive players was between Nickmercs and Aydan. At the time, controller players were still trying to prove themselves against the dominant keyboard players. And during the summer skirmish, these two ended up creating one of the most entertaining matchups in the tournament. Both Nick and Aydan were landing at tilted towers, which meant that they were running into each other over and over again. It quickly turned into a full-on battle between the top 2 controller players. Throughout the tournament, Aydan managed to eliminate Nick 4 different times. But what made the rivalry interesting was that it never really seemed like Nick was salty about it. He even tweeted at Aydan afterwards showing respect, which helped turn the whole situation into something fans loved watching rather than just a toxic feud. The first fight didn't last very long. Aydan caught Nick early and eliminated him instantly, even hitting an emote right after. The second encounter was much closer. Nick actually managed to get Aydan down to just 2 HP, but since Aydan had heals, he recovered quickly and bounced back, eliminating Nick once again. The third fight was even more chaotic. Both of them were dealing with third parties, and Aydan kept throwing stink bombs to slowly chip away at Nick's health. When they finally engaged, Nick accidentally pulled out his heals mid-fight, and Aydan took advantage, finishing him off with another emote. Then in their fourth encounter, Aydan opened the fight by throwing C4, following it up with an SMG to secure another elimination. By the end of the event, the rivalry had become one of the most talked about storylines from the summer skirmish. But what happened next made it even more interesting. In the next major tournament, the fall skirmish, the format was duos. And instead of continuing their rivalry, Nickmercs and Aydan teamed up.
The SMG. Nick and Aydan's towers. Nick and Aydan's towers. Love it.
The two controller stars quickly became fan favorites, putting together some very impressive games and showing great chemistry, making the battle for Tilted Towers even more iconic to this day. A more recent rivalry that picked up a lot of attention in the competitive scene was Bugha and Khanada. And like a lot of the Fortnite rivalries we've seen, it escalated out of the game and included some drama on social media. The tension really kicked off around DreamHack when Bugha publicly criticized Khanada for coaching Clix during the tournament.
Bro, is Khanada? He's trolling. Yo, if anyone's at the venue right now and you're watching my stream, run up to them and tell Khanada to get out of his ear, please.
Bugha was also threatening to leak something about Khanada that would make it harder for him to find an org.
Yo, should I leak? Oh my god. Nah, I don't know if I should do it on stream.
And from there, things escalated really fast between the two. Khanada called Bugha washed and said he leeches off of Clix for his leftover viewers.
He is so, look at this. He's literally
Bugha!
He knows that
what do you want,
your stream, he knows your stream is so much better than his, that he needs you. He needs to take your clout and give it back to him, because he lost it all. Because he's so annoying. Nobody wants to watch him, bro.
And both sides started accusing each other of things like stream sniping and intentionally griefing, with Bugha claiming that Khanada was specifically targeting him in tournaments. Instead of backing down, Khanada actually leaned into the feud. When he joined K&G, he even referenced the beef in his welcome video, turning the drama into part of his brand. For a while, the two players stayed on opposite sides of the competitive scene. But in 2023, things finally cooled off for a while when Khanada joined Dignitas, the same org that Bugha was already a part of at the time. The rivalry seemed to settle down, and for the moment, it looked like the two had moved past it. But that didn't last long. In 2024, the tension came right back when Agers dropped Khanada as his duo and chose Bugha instead. Khanada was actually on vacation when it happened and had to rush home just to find a new teammate before the next tournament. And when Bugha and Agers were struggling early in their run together, Khanada didn't miss the opportunity. He publicly mocked their results, bringing the rivalry right back into the spotlight. After getting dropped, Khanada teamed up with Cooper, and they had a strong finish in the grand finals, coming in third. While Bugha and Agers placed in 13th. So it seems like in the end, Khanada got the last laugh.
How is it over there? How is it down there, bro?
One of the most intense rivalries we've seen ever at a LAN happened during the 2022 FNCS Invitational, the global championship that brought the best players in the world together. This was the first major LAN since 2019 World Cup, so the pressure on everyone competing was insane. And right in the middle of the tournament, a rivalry formed between two of Europe's best duos, Queasy and Veno and Cami and Setty. Both teams were tournament favorites, and game after game, they found themselves fighting to survive in the endgame. Queasy and Veno finished in first place after day one, but Cami and Setty started getting hot. They were neck and neck, and it was one of those rivalries where every single encounter felt like it could completely change the tournament. But the biggest moment happened in game 12. Cami and Setty just won their fourth game of the Invitational, retaking first by just 12 points before the final match. Their consistency seemed too much to overcome, and now Queasy and Veno had to make a decision. They could play it safe and stick to the game plan at their normal drop, trying to outplace Cami and Setty later in the game. After all, the difference between second and third place is tens of thousands of dollars. So playing it safe and securing a guaranteed second is not a bad idea. But they were so far ahead of the third place duo that they were confident enough to take the biggest risk of the entire tournament. They decided to take matters into their own hands and contest Cami and Setty, essentially putting the entire tournament down to a single off-spawn fight.
What is this? What is this? Queasy, Veno are trying to take it by force!
They scramble to find shotguns, Queasy takes out Setty, Cami takes out Queasy, and it all comes down to Veno versus Cami, both armed with shotguns and 150 HP. This is Cami's drop spot, and he knows that Veno can't place a wall where he's peeking. Cami charges forward face to face with Veno, who tries to build a wall after shooting back. And Cami ends up with one of the most iconic clutches in Fortnite competitive history. With a 70-point gap between them and third place, Cammy and Setty cemented their invitational win right then and there. For that tournament, the rivalry between these two duos created some of the most intense moments we've seen on a Fortnite stage. Not every rivalry in Fortnite competitive has to be toxic. Sometimes it's just funny. One of the most unexpected ones in recent years has been between Typicalgamer and Peterbot. And the whole thing actually started during the Fortnite Pro-Am. During the event, Typicalgamer managed to eliminate Peterbot in a fight, which quickly went viral on social media.
Nice. I'm talking to him.
Oh my gosh, wait, let me emote on him, bro. Yeah, sit down. That's it, that's a highlight, baby. Did you hit him at all?
No, I didn't touch him, bro. You just murdered him.
But instead of it being real drama, it became more of a joke. Whenever they would end up in the same lobby, Typicalgamer somehow kept finding a way to eliminate Peterbot. There was a cash cup during the Star Wars season where it happened again, this time from TG's perspective, catching Peterbot completely off guard.
Oh my god!
Nice game in.
Jesus! Typicalgamer hiding.
Then later in Chapter 6, Season 4, it happened again during another cash cup.
I'm Peterbot's nightmare!
At this point, it basically became a meme that the only person who can take out Peterbot is Typicalgamer. Peterbot is constantly putting up insane performances during tournaments, but for some reason, when TG is around, he gets sent back to the lobby.
I killed Peterbot!
I am Peterbot's nightmare queen.
Hey, I'm gonna insta splash here. You're gonna break this back.
And of course, we can't talk about Fortnite rivalries without talking about the feud between the two most popular Fortnite pros right now, Peterbot and Clix. And interesting enough, it didn't really start off as serious beef. A lot of people trace it back to the FNCS Global Championship in 2024, where the two started trash talking each other.
Are you landing on him?
I'm landing on him. Clix, and I'm landing on him.
But it felt more like friendly banter than anything else. And heading into Chapter 6, both players were in very different situations. Peterbot was coming off an incredible run of dominance and setting records. Clix, however, had always been one of the most popular players in the game, but the competitive success wasn't lining up the same way. For years, people joked about the 4th place curse. No matter how well Clix played, he kept finishing just short of top 3.
I just don't get it, bro.
That finally changed in Chapter 6, Season 1, when Clix placed 3rd in the FNCS Major 1, officially breaking that curse. And after getting dropped mid-season earlier in the Major, fate kind of stepped in. Clix ended up forming a trio with Higgs and Iyamzo, and the team found quick success, dominating in tournaments early on. By the time Chapter 6 Season 2 rolled around, Clix's trio had become arguably the 2nd best trio in the world. They were consistently placing at the top of tournaments and even managed to break Peterbot's insane Division Cup win streak. And when the grand finals arrived, the rivalry turned into something very real. Early on, the two teams were constantly trading momentum. At one point during the tournament, Clix was in 1st place with 411 points, while Peterbot was in 2nd with 378. Then in Game 6, Peterbot made a bold early push onto Clix's team. The community was pretty torn about this. After the fight, Peterbot's trio managed to build a 51-point lead going into Day 2. On the 2nd day, Clix's trio slowly clawed their way back up the leaderboard. They won Game 8, bringing the standings incredibly close. Clix sitting at 608 points, and Peterbot's trio right ahead of them at 611. Then in Game 10, Iyamzo pulled off a huge solo clutch, finishing 2nd place and keeping their championship hopes alive.
Nice! Good so! Good so! You're insane!
By the time the tournament reached the final games, the entire FNCS just came down to a few dozen points. Going into Game 12, the difference between the two teams were only 35 points. At one point, both teams even ran into each other at Crime City, briefly pushing each other before backing off. Clix's team still had one problem though. They weren't really healthy on Surge. They pushed another team nearby to rack up some damage, which led to a chaotic fight involving what the community now remembers, the Higgs Chug Splash incident.
You guys need to get me up. You guys need to get me up now. Get me up, get me up, get me up, get me up. Chug me, chug me, chug me, chug me, chug me. Guys.
Peterbot's trio ended up going down first, but Clix's trio couldn't quite close the gap.
Oh no, it's a 5-tick! And they fall! Oh no, they were just 11 points away from the FNCS champion. I don't think we could have witnessed anything greater than this.
When the dust settled, Clix, Iyamzo, and Higgs fell just 11 points short of 1st place, allowing Peterbot to secure another FNCS title, while Clix came in 2nd in what people still consider the best tournament of his career. And even though the rivalry started as a joke, at this point it has become very real. Because as recently as Chapter 7, Peterbot has said that part of the reason why he still plays tournaments is to make sure Clix doesn't win.
On my mother's life, you're never winning an FNCS. Put on my mother's heartbeat.
Cool.
It's all good, dude.
There have been times when he said if his tournament isn't going well, he'll land on Clix's team just to ruin their run.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie. I promise you Clix will never ever win an FNCS as long as I'm on this region, bro. Even if I'm dudding, I'm landing on him so he doesn't win.
Whether it's fighting for FNCS titles, qualifying for the Esports World Cup, or just trying to outplay each other in the same lobby, the Clix versus Peterbot rivalry has become one of the most entertaining storylines in competitive Fortnite. And that right there concludes 10 of the biggest rivalries in Fortnite history. Like this video and subscribe if I should do a part 2. Thank you for watching.